Välkomna till den här studiodiskussionen som ska handla om jämställdhetsarbete som genomförs på kommunal nivå. Under vecka 45, under detta året 2010, har vi en delegation från Sydafrika och staden Potchefstroom som ligger strax utanför Johannesburg på besök i Växjö kommun som en del av det projekt som de två kommunerna genomför och som handlar om kommunalt jämställdhetsutbyte. Mitt namn är Daniel Folkesson och jag kommer hålla i den här studiodiskussionen. Jag har 4 gäster med mig. 2 stycken från den svenska sidan och 2 stycken från Sydafrika. Vi kommer hålla den här diskussionen på engelska och vi kommer hålla på ungefär 20-25 minuter någonting. Yeah, I just said that we have 4 guests for this discussion and I would like you very shortly to introduce yourself. Start by you.
I'm Ronnie Matras from Potchefstroom, Clockway City Council. I am an official at the City Council in Potchefstroom.
I'm Carin Högstedt. I'm responsible for gender issues in Växjö municipality, together with Mayor Bo Frank, and I'm in the project as a politician.
My name is Dolos Luka. I'm an official in Clockway City Council, responsible for the formulation of the integrated development plan of the municipality.
My name is Suzana Mocevic and I'm working as official, more as diversity coordinator at Växjö City Council.
Thank you all for joining me during this discussion. First of all, Suzana, I would like to ask you shortly about the background of this project. How did the idea of a joint project come up from the start?
Yeah, Växjö City Council had a great cooperation with Potchefstroom during the past years. And then we thought that it has been projects when it comes to economy, when it comes to PR, when it comes to democracy. And then we thought that it would be a great idea to have a project as well when it comes to gender equality. And then we started to think about what kind of focus targets, visions we should have with the project. And we decided at least that we are going to make a project proposal and have 3 different targets for the project. One is political representation. The second one is more how we work with other NGOs, for example, other organizations that are working with gender issues. And the third target was based on gender-based violence. How do we work as City Council with domestic violence or gender-based violence? Yes.
Okay, so this is actually the first stage of the new project.
Yeah, this is the first stage of the project, and our friends from South Africa are here for 1 week. Then we are going to have a midterm project, sub-project in the middle of our visits back to South Africa, and yeah.
Okay.
We're looking forward to it.
If I start by asking the 2 representatives here, what do you think is what could you gain from taking part in this kind of project? What do you say, Carin?
We always can gain learning from each other. I think gender and for example, violence, domestic violence, that's a global phenomenon, and it is very similar through all the world. Only the degrees can vary, and the development level. But I think we always can learn, and that's what we are going to do. Perhaps we can gain something concrete also. I hope so, but I don't know in this moment what it will be.
And what do you say, Suzana?
I think that I have noticed during this week that we definitely have same problems when it comes to gender equality. We still, women are still unpaid. Women still get their salary 85% of men, for example. And in South Africa, they have come a little bit better than we. But I think that we are going to find methods and cooperation how we can be better when it comes to gender equality, definitely.
If we then turn to our two South African guests, what do you think that you could gain from cooperating with a municipality in Sweden when it comes to gender equality work from the municipal side?
Well, I think in terms of cooperating with the Swedish counterpart, I think it also gives us a good chance, to interact at that level, as it also assists us in terms of participating in achieving the 8th goal of the Millennium Development. The goal being, global partnership for development. And it's actually learning from different, aspects how the Swedish is actually doing it. And at the same time also, the Swedish learning from us in Potchefstroom how we're actually doing it. So that we are able to share best practices and learn from each other. I think in a way that would also assist us, to implement what we have learned in terms of best practices in our own, situation. There is a thinking that you actually think globally, but you implement locally.
Yeah.
So I think it will be in the best interest that we learn from each other.
And Ronnie, so far, have you seen anything during the week? You have only been here for 4 days now, I think. And have you so far seen anything that you would like to bring home to your municipality?
Definitely. The first thing that comes to my mind is our cultures. And a lot of people think that culture is, we are born with culture and culture is part of our DNA. But through the years, we've been taught culture, how to do things a specific way. And what I've seen here in these 4 days is that we can change perspectives and teach people how to think differently when it comes to gender, and just to think or put yourself in another situation, the situation of how women is being treated, and maybe the same as women can put themselves into the situation of men, and changing of roles, just to, even though it's for 1 day or few hours, just to have that experience. And if we can take this, what we have learned here in Växjö to Potchefstroom, and just try to implement it there. And I know it's not going to change overnight. It takes time. So just bring that across to our council and work with what we have been taught here. Our democracy is very young. We have implemented gender equality in our municipality, but still we have got a lot to learn, and what we have learned here is very valuable to us.
Okay. We heard that one part of the project is about discussing representation among the two sexes and find methods about supporting women into politics, but also males, of course, becoming good politicians and have an even representation. Could you maybe from the South African side describe the situation in your council in Potchefstroom? How is the representation between men and women there?
Well, I think in terms of, also looking at the global perspective in terms of representation, between women and men, in terms of our own parliament, local municipalities, district and provincial level. I think in our own situation, there is a fair representation of women. In the executive mayor, which is the member of the mayoral committee, there are 3 women that are actually, holding position at that highest level, being the member MMC, which is the member of the executive committee, responsible for public safety, Another one is actually the MMC in the Office of the Executive Mayor, heading the unit for women, youth, disabilities, and the other one being the MMC for housing. But that's only a reflection in terms of women representation within the ANC-led municipality. Whereas in the opposition, well, there is hardly that kind of representation. It's actually a male-dominated, you know, kind of opposition. But I think it's quite a good thing, you know, a yardstick that would also influence other political parties in terms of gender representation, so that it's not something that you actually talk about, but it's something that gets done.
And in Växjö, how would you like to mirror or display the situation in your council, Carin? Do we see an even representation here?
In Sweden and in Växjö, we have been successful, I would say, concerning gender equality in politics. In politics, not in private sector, for example, in the boards, but in politics. And that is after, I think, about 1985, we had a national project called Every Second a Woman. And that was a break on the walls, I would say. After that, we have succeeded to have a better representation. And today, women and men are represented almost everywhere, in the political organizations. And I think that allocation of quotas is a good method, not the goal, but a good method. It helped us. And now we are discussing how can we do in the private sector. And some of us say allocation of quotas, as in Norway, for example. I think we have a good representation. It is not 50-50, but almost. Now we had elections, just had elections in Växjö, so we don't know exactly how it will see after 1st of January, but it is interesting.
But you said an equal representation is not the goal.
No, and not the quotas, but it is a method.
So
no.
A 50-50 situation is not a proof of gender equality?
No, it is not.
What do you mean
not
by that?
If you talk with me. No, I mean it's the power it is about, and that's a good förutsättning.
Prerequisite.
Yeah, with equal representations, but it's not the goal. You would be listened to also. You will be heard, and you will what you say as a woman and as a man shall have the same value. That's the goal, and so it isn't today.
And how do you reflect on what Carin is saying? Do you agree with her, or?
It's true. To have 50-50 in your work area doesn't necessarily mean that is gender equality, especially when the perceptions of men or whoever is not being changed yet. But what I can applaud our council is we have now introduced women in predominantly male areas, say like at the mechanical workshop and electricians. There are women now being employed, there are apprentices, and there are also women in the learnership programs taking part in that, in the male-dominated works or labor that men did in the past. So they are not a lot, but the introduction is slowly but surely, and by doing that we know that the thinking of the community has been changed.
Suzana, you said before that one part of the project is about domestic violence. To what extent do we see domestic violence in Sweden nowadays? Is it common, or?
Domestic violence or gender-based violence is a global problem that we have all over the world. But in Sweden, it is a huge problem still, because one beaten woman because of her gender is too many, I say. But when it comes to Växjö, for example, I am also chairman for a women's shelter here, and we have seen that statistics have been increasing over the past years. There's different answers to why it has been like that. First of all, we are having foundations that are helping us to have employees at our women's shelter, because that is the result that we are making ourselves available all the time. During the financial crisis here in Sweden and global, we have seen that women and domestic violence has been increasing. So it is still a huge problem in Sweden and in Växjö and globally as well.
You say it's a global problem. Do you have the same problem in your city also? Do you see that the things that we hear here we also have it?
Well, I think yes, quite agree that we have similar problems in terms of gender-based violence. To an extent that I think it actually affects each and everyone. That we are also now focusing in terms of using our partners, the civil society and other institutions, so that we are able to do awareness campaign, take it to the schools, so that each and every child, every person is actually made aware about this gender-based violence, domestic violence, so that these issues get reported. We are able, to stand up. We have, different campaigns, 16 days of activism, which actually relates to, no domestic violence for a certain period. But we are actually saying it must not be an event, but it must be sort of like a process that actually addresses the ills that we see, bringing down our society. So yes, I agree that we have similar problems.
You're bringing up the civil society in all this. Could you maybe explain what kind of organizations that the municipality is cooperating with when it comes to domestic violence?
Well, we're talking in terms of umbrella bodies, but those umbrella bodies have got affiliates. We're talking to WIPA, which is an organization, a locally based organization that also deals with issues that affect home-based care, but at the same time raising issues of awareness against, violence against women. We've got House PESA, which is also a regional, or one could say provincial organization having national perspective, also being responsible for. But we also have, women's organization, church organization, women that are actually linked to the church, also coming on forth. You also have your own burial society that are actually led by women. We also collaborating with those kind of women churches and so forth. But also we are also taking it to the business sector so as to engage as much as possible and also broaden the scope in terms of making, awareness.
Are you emphasizing the partnership with the civil sector just as much as they apparently do in South Africa?
Perhaps not so much, but we have partners, yes. Of course we have. And we have to work together with police and social sector and other organizations. For example, BOI, brottsofferjouren i Växjö, which we have met yesterday. And yes, Suzana, there are more organizations.
I think it's really important that we are actually working both with civil society but with other organizations and institutions, because it is not a problem, it is not an issue for women only, it is an issue for whole society, because maybe those women have families and their husbands are affected and their children are affected and the whole society is getting affected, and thereby it is important that we have a good cooperation with different institutions and NGOs and organizations, definitely.
And then an open question to you all. I heard that we learned that next step of the project will be some local working in Sweden and South Africa, and then you will meet again in Potchefstroom in beginning of next year. Do you think that you will gain something from this new partnership, this new cooperation, that you in a practical manner will be able to use afterwards? And what do you think that would be?
I think the representations of women in Sweden in private sector's board, the big companies, is so small, is so very small in Sweden, that I think we can learn from South Africa. I know very many countries have better representations, and that's one thing.
And any reflections from your side, from South Africa?
Well, the way I've seen how issues around the violence is actually embedded in terms of the planning of the Vasco municipality. It's something that we would actually learn, although we do have, legislation that actually allows us. We have the Municipal Systems Act that actually allows us that during our planning stages, we should also look at issues that addresses, issues of gender. For an example, when we design projects, it is a requirement that each and every project should have a reflection of the gender perspective, like your cross-cutting dimensions. Each and every project, you should have women, you should have youth, people with disabilities. And in our planning stages, every project we should also have gender mainstreaming. And I see that in your context, it is part and parcel of the planning. And I think it's a learning experience, because it has been very difficult for us in terms of implementation. But I've seen quite a number of presentations how you have managed to do that. And it's a learning experience for us to say we should also be, follow suit in terms of implementing that kind of, arrangement.
Okay. Then I would like to thank you all for coming to this studio debate. It was really interesting to listen to you. Och jag vill också passa på att tacka alla er som har tittat på det här. Projektet fortsätter, men tv-programmet är slut. Tack för ikväll. Tack för ikväll. Det var gött. Jag kommer visa på dagen. Ja, tydligen så är det. Det kanske inte var så bra.